Good evening, everybody. Welcome into the Nittany Lions Sports Report. It's live here on Bob Long Sports, and as we have been all year long, also simulcast on the Small Player Big Play app, run by Bruce Badgley and his great group of guys that brought us on this year. I'll introduce my co-host now. His name is Tyler Gelhaus, and we've been together. Well, we started in person, and then COVID kind of ramped up, and we finished on Zoom. Looking forward to joining everybody back, we'll say in person, at least you and I in person as we do these shows next year. But Tyler, we come to the end of what was a historic and unique season for, in many ways, a lot of the wrong reasons. But Penn State wins 4 in a row. Nice solid victory, 56 points put up against Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
Take us through your thoughts on where we came from this year and the team and everything in between.
Sure. First and foremost, I mean, really, credit to the program, the coaches, the players. Penn State was one of 2 teams in a Big Ten not to have a game canceled and to play all 9. So, testament there for sure. The guys stayed, I'm sure there's a little bit of luck with that, but also, staying grounded, doing what you're supposed to do, staying disciplined. So kudos to them. Obviously, at one point of the season, it was kind of like this season can end at any time, being 0-5, but another credit to them, turning it around and winning 4 in a row. Not the toughest opponents by any stretch, but you started to see what you'd hope to see all season, and they started to play as one unit. It wasn't always pretty, but 4-5, I'll take that after starting out 0-5, obviously, and hopefully it can springboard them into the off season. Should be a very busy off season. We're already seeing some movement with the transfers and such, and expect to see a lot more. So, I mean, I'm happy the season's over, though, because it just didn't feel like regular college football, and it wasn't regular college football. I miss the fans. Hopefully, people are back in the stands cheering next year. And hopefully they can learn from the 0-5 start and use that for a little extra motivation for the beginning of next year.
Yeah, some housekeeping items on the game from Saturday and what followed. It was the day of Jahan Dotson. Unbelievable at the wide receiver position. A couple of touchdowns, long touchdowns at that.
Mm-hmm.
A near kick return, which was incredible. Great day for him. Does cast a little bit of doubt that was already there as to whether he may or may not come back next season. All that yet to be determined. After the game, decision about going to a bowl game or not, you highlighted it a bit there, Tyler. Will not be going to a bowl game this year. It was a decision made by the players. It allows them to get to their families by Christmas. And James Franklin to see his family, which had been living in Florida for the extent of the year. He gets to see them for the first time in 4 months. After the game as well, Shane Simmons, longtime defensive end, didn't really have the career at Penn State from a playing perspective that he may want. He's decided to forego that extra year of eligibility, move on to a career in business. We're seeing Pat Freiermuth officially make the decision to head to the NFL. So a lot of changes here, Tyler. Some things still yet to be determined. I would assume that Shaka Toney does go, but just like everybody else, he has one more year if he wants it. Jason Owe, we expect him to go to the NFL draft as well. So we will see a very different defensive end position next year. But again, a lot of decisions to be coming over the next few weeks without a doubt. Those are some of the major, we'll call them housekeeping items that came about shortly after the game.
If I can add to that, there will be a lot of subtraction and guys moving on, whether it be not wanting to come back for a 6th year, which is totally understandable. Going to the NFL, Penn State actually was just on the other end. They got a grad transfer from a running back out of Baylor, John Lovett. He's actually from Burlington County, New Jersey. So I think this is good, especially with the Noah Cain injury. Not sure. He probably won't be playing much in the spring, if at all. Hopefully he's 100% by the time next, August, September rolls around. But John Lovett, I think it'll be a good addition. He's more of he's almost like a Journey Brown build. Very similar style of play, maybe a little bit more powerful, but not as fast probably as Journey Brown. But this is good for Penn State. We saw this year how our running back room went from stacked to barely anything. Thank God, Kevon Lee and Keziah Holmes could really, come in and play as true freshmen, or else it would have been in a really bad spot. But you can never have too much depth at any position. So I think it's a good pickup. And I certainly think that there's going to be more pickups this year. I think pretty much every position's in play, and it's almost like NFL free agency. We're really not used to Penn State bringing in a lot through the portal, but I think this year's going to be different because there's no penalty when you transfer, whether you're a grad transfer, or a regular transfer that hasn't graduated from their previous institution yet.
Yep, I think that's love. It's a great pickup, right? I mean, this isn't just some
Gotta love it.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? That's going to be a new signage down on down at Nittanyville
Yeah, there
next
you
year.
go.
Gotta love it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, and that's going to be I think it's a great pickup. Like exactly what you said. If there's ever a year to show how a running back room can go down to the bare bones very quickly, and again, there's a lot that went along with this year, and you wouldn't expect that next year. But you never can have enough depth, and it serves to mention that he was a strong contributor for 3 years at Baylor, and
Yeah.
he's a guy that can play at a high level. Some of these Baylor teams were very, very talented. Charlie Brewer, some teams that were trying to, under Matt Rule, back end their way into the college football playoffs. So this is a guy who can play at the highest level, and it will be interesting to see what type of role he takes on. You never can have too much depth. We've talked about it at the wide receiver position with Jahan Dotson potentially moving on. You folks may have seen the interview that we did with Winston Eubanks just last week, and there's another guy, right? Maybe he's a too deep guy if Jahan Dotson comes back, but if Jahan Dotson does choose to move on, there is a starting wide receiver spot on the line, and so you never can have too much depth at any given position. Obviously, that's that's a given, but it's important. I think this team will hit the transfer market hard. Again, folks are going to ask, what about the quarterback? What about the quarterback? That's going to take a little bit longer. I think that's going to be more on the DL, if you will. You can't really have a coach going out there saying we are actively looking for a quarterback. Doesn't really show a lot of trust in the locker room. And God forbid you don't come up with somebody after making a public statement like that.
Right.
Give the coaches a little bit of time and credit that they understand the situation and they need an upgrade at the quarterback position. I would anticipate that that's a focus. There's just going to be really no time frame nor lead time on when it happens.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I personally think a lot of positions are in play right now. I think the most important at the moment are quarterback, safety, and defensive end. I think that they're the three most important from pure talent and depth purposes. You talked about Simmons isn't coming back for his 6th season. Tony, I would assume he's off to the NFL after his 5th season. And then, you talked about Jason Oweh, who's being projected as a 1st or 2nd round pick. I would be under the assumption he would go too. So you're going to have some holes there for sure. Numbers and talent you have to replace.
Let's talk about safety, though, because we did see what I'd like to see next year, the Lackawanna connection between Jair Brown and Jaquan Brisker. Uncertain on Jaquan Brisker at this point, but the hope is that he comes back.
Yeah, I think if Jaquan Brisker comes back, I think it's one of those things. It's a true win-win for Penn State and Brisker. The coaching staff, as I hear, is always telling the players what's best in their interest, their personal interest. You got to go now and get your money. We'll replace you. That's our job to replace you and, come up with guys through the program or the portal. But I feel like Brisker right now is probably a late round pick. I think that if he comes back, he really started to flash at the end of the season. And I think that if he comes back, he could be a 2nd, 3rd round type of draft pick in the NFL it would be the 22 draft.
Assuming he continues to take those strides.
Yeah. I think that, the light is finally going on and we're starting to see, the coverage is improving a lot. He's unbelievable stopping the run up near the line of scrimmage. So that would be huge if they could get him back and start him alongside Jair Brown, have that little Lackawanna connection that you talked about, the tandem back there at safety. That would certainly be very nice. But I don't know. I'm not really expecting any of the guys that are on the border to come Porter to come back. It seems like it's been that kind of year for Penn State, but I don't know. I think that the locker room, we talked about it earlier in the season, that it just didn't look that strong. Like, they were emotionalists in the first couple games, but the last couple games, I know winning cures a lot, but it looked like a tight-knit group having fun on the sidelines, carrying Dotson on their shoulders after he gets touchdowns and all that good stuff. So, there's been a lot more emotion. I think that it sounds like the program's in better standing than what it appeared to be, a month, 2 months ago. So I hope that they can talk him into it for Penn State's sake, because I think that he could benefit Brisker, as well from coming back for one more year.
It's a lot to talk about. And at the end of the season, it's obviously where your mind is going to turn. But, Tyler,
Right.
we're also going to have a lot of time to talk about that. So
One more thing, if I may, on that transfer topic, that there are going to be, I don't know, you could say at least five players coming in via the portal. We already have a few with Eubanks and Lovett. You're also going to have 5, 6, maybe more leaving via the portal. And let's be honest, a lot of it is going to be guys that have been passed up, by younger guys that maybe have been at Penn State for 2-3 years, and they just realize that, look, my time might not, come at Penn State. I might have to go elsewhere. We see younger guys passing these older guys up. You look at the tight end.
Saw that with Trent Gordon earlier in the year.
Right.
And a little bit surprising. But
and all you have to do is really look at a tight end position. I mean, there's 2 freshmen, because Brenton Strange is a redshirt freshman, and Theo, and they'll carry that freshman eligibility over to next year as well. So, for example, that's one of the many examples, but I think you know what I'm trying to say here. So there is going to be some
I'm
fruition.
gonna put it to you. So do you think Zach Kuntz enters the transfer portal?
I mean, I would be surprised if he didn't, just because he really didn't get that much time this year, and ever since Freiermuth got hurt, man, it's almost like, obviously it stinks for Freiermuth. He still has a long career ahead of him in the NFL. He's going to make a ton of money. Hopefully he stays healthy in the NFL. But Brenton Strange really stepped up. I'm really impressed with him.
Unbelievable blocker.
Unbelievable blocker. And that touchdown that he had on that 4th and 1, jumping at the 4, pretty much like I don't even know how he did it. It was incredible that he got that touchdown. And then, we started to see more of Theo Johnson at the end of the year. I mean, 6'5", true freshman that weighs 250. I mean, he looked like an NFL player out there already, size-wise. He's got a ton of talent, and I just think that I don't know if Kuntz didn't play this year with Freiermuth getting hurt and not playing in the last 5-6 games. I don't know, what his role would be next year, and maybe he sees greener pasture somewhere else.
Well, it's an interesting point, because Theo Johnson comes in his redshirt year and is ready to play. And he's only going to get more ready to play next year. He's only going to be more developed.
Right. And he got a free year out of it, too. He didn't have, you know what I mean?
More so, I'm saying the fact that he was ready to step out there on the field before a guy who's in his 3rd year with the program.
You're saying Kuntz?
This year that Theo Johnson was out there on the field before Zach Kuntz.
Right, and he was there for not even a full year yet. Because he was an early enrollee. Yeah, I mean, he hasn't even had a full year in Dwight Galt's weight room either. So
that's the point. He's only going to be more ready next year.
Yeah, he's going to be a stud. I'm really happy with the tight end position with Brenton Strange and Theo Johnson, and even under them, Kuntz, Tyler Warren, another true freshman this year. I mean, so Tyler Bowen has a ton of, weapons there to play with at the tight end position. So, Zach Kuntz is one of them. I think you're going to see some movement at the wide receiver position. Some of the older guys getting passed up by guys like Parker Washington, Keandre Lambert-Smith. Not to mention you have, Eubanks coming in. But you're also going to have a pretty good freshman receiving class coming in. Hopefully, Lonnie White, I don't know if he'll be ready to play right away. He is very athletic. Hopefully, he gets to that point where he is at Penn State, not in the MLB. But they really are high on Liam Clifford, the younger brother of Sean, as a wide receiver, and they think that he could be an impact guy right off the bat as well. So
Yeah.
I think you're going to see
And of course Harrison Wallace, the
yeah,
recent commit.
yeah. So I think for sure you're going to see some guys leave. It is what it is. It doesn't necessarily mean, the world's coming to an end, but remember, you have to be under 85 scholarships.
Although anybody that chooses to stay,
if they
as a
choose for a
senior,
6-year,
yeah,
then they don't
then it
count
doesn't.
towards it. But I don't really see many happening, to be honest with you. Maybe a Brisker, even though it would really only be his 5th year instead of a 6th. But
Right. Very interesting. So again, a long time and a lot of months, unfortunately for Penn State fans, to stew over these questions and a lot more to develop. So we'll let the dust settle for some time. But again, let's break down this final game and really what it represents, right? Because we can talk about all Dotson's passing yards. We can talk about that Clifford seemed to get it together after an absolutely unacceptable fumble, if we will, and really put together a great performance. But it's really the seismic shift of this team. It's going from dropping behind 35-7 against Maryland and feeling like they were quitting on the season, not sure who your quarterback was going to be from game to game or down to down, and getting to the point where they won 4 games in succession, double-digit wins in a lot of them, 56 points in this one, outscoring the Illini team 35-0 down the stretch in this game after giving up 21 first-half points. There's a lot to like. There's some things to dislike as well. But if you're a Penn State football fan, you have to feel better about this team. No, I don't think they're ready for the college football playoff right now, but you have to feel a little bit better about where things are right now than you did a month ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go on the negatives from what I saw from the game, and it was a recurring theme really throughout the season. Was I don't know, the defense has like that one bad quarter. I'm sorry, even half. Recently, earlier in the season was the whole game, but and it's just like they forget how to tackle. We saw it on that long run where Lance Dixon and Jair Brown totally just like barely tried to 2-hand touch the tight end running down the sideline for a touchdown. The turnover with Clifford, it felt like a game that should have been buried early, especially after the first play. Illinois had like 50 scholarship guys out with them, a new coach, and I mean they hung around for a half, at least that quarter. I mean, but it was nice to see Penn State really put the foot on the gas and totally dismantle Illinois in that game.
Yeah, I mean, listen, based upon what you just said there, Tyler, Lance Dixon, first and foremost, needs to start playing better football if he wants to play linebacker here long term. That was not the only missed tackle, far from it. He's had some issues on a gap and control and an assignment basis in the past. He has all the tools in the world. Next year needs to be a big year for him if he wants to play better and play consistently here at Penn State. Second thing is, what a great first play, right? Jahan Dotson catch and run. The hidden truth there is that ball was inaccurately thrown.
That was a terrible pass.
Terrible pass. Somehow it got Dotson going in the right direction, caught the corner flat-footed, but that ball, that was a curl. It had to go to the sideline.
Yeah. If that ball gets through Dotson's hands, it's picked off.
Yep.
I mean, it did lead him to that open, but the 2 touchdown passes by Clifford to Dotson. I mean, it was all Dotson. I mean, the curl play on the first play and then the screen. I shouldn't say all Dotson on the screen. It was all catch after the run, but he got those big linemen out there blocking.
How about
for
the
him.
juice?
Yeah. It's a blessing, that he's playing football right now after that car accident, and it's unbelievable the production Penn State's getting out of him. He's definitely one of the top 5 linemen on the team. He hasn't started. He hasn't even really played starters minutes, but it's like they're easing him into next year, where he's going to be either your starting center or left or right guard. I mean, he's been playing unbelievable this year, and it's a good thing that he's healthy and that he can be a valuable weapon on the offensive line.
Yeah, Juice Scruggs, absolutely a starter next year in my estimation, and huge to see. Let's talk about a great year for Phil Troutwine as the offensive line coach of this team. Took over for Matt Limegrover. Everybody seemed to like Matt. Thought he did a decent job, but at some point the lines just never got to where they needed to be. Troutwine has not only done a good job, but brought in two pretty good linemen. We can talk about some of the guys they missed on as well. But
Yeah.
Landon Tengwall, who is a anchor cornerstone of the recruiting class type of guy, and Nate Bruce coming from Harrisburg, who I think both are starters eventually on this program, on this team at this program. So, a great start for Phil for Troutwine. Let's see if he can keep up the momentum with the 2022 and eventually the 2023 classes there. But you like where things are rather than the prior status quo.
Yeah, I think that with bringing in Tengwall and Bruce, they're both definitely going to be starters. Is my guess at Penn State. I think Tengwall is going to be a starter much sooner than Nate Bruce. I think Tengwall could be a starter next year. I think he could be a starter when the season opens in Madison on Labor Day weekend. I think he's that good. He's huge. He's strong. He can play guard or tackle. I think guard is a much easier position to ease a freshman into, and later kick them out to tackle if there's a need there and you think he can be a better tackle. I don't know, Rasheed Walker, whether or not he leaves and what kind of depth they have at tackle is another issue. But I think that you're going to see
So what brings
Tengwall.
that up? Why would you say Rasheed Walker?
Well, I mean, if Rasheed Walker goes to the NFL, which is a
Yeah.
possibility, that opens up another tackle spot.
Does that seem likely to you? I wouldn't say that's the most likely scenario in my
At
estimation.
at the beginning of the season, it was almost set in stone that after this year he'd be going. I don't think he had the year that he wanted.
Agreed.
Um, I don't see him being a first or second, maybe a third round pick at the best. I think he could benefit from coming back another year, but again, you never know what's going on with these guys, obviously, and if they've just had enough, um, and are ready to get out of the college scene and move on to the NFL. Um, you know, in the event that Rasheed Walker does leave, that opens up the left tackle spot. Whether it would be like a Des Holmes, who I would probably start at left tackle, at least give him a shot there. I think you have a good young guy at right tackle and Caden Wallace, and then another one that it would be whether or not he comes back for a 6 year would be Will Fries. That would be interesting to me. Maybe if he tries to get a year of playing one of the guard positions under his belt for better film for the NFL, that could certainly be a possibility too. But yeah, I think Tengwall is going to play right away. I really think he has a good chance to start. He'll definitely be in the two deep. And Nate Bruce, I think, is a little bit more of a project, but I really like his game too. And I think Troutwine, even though it's a small O line class, and like you mentioned, they missed out on some of the
Nolan
bigger names.
Ritchie.
Yeah, they missed out on some of the bigger names, but I think 2022 is going to be better for him recruiting, and I think that these two guys that they're bringing in, they're going to be very happy with.
Agreed. Agreed. I'll say this, Tyler, because we are at now the sentimental part of the season where you look back and what a crazy and unique season it was. I'm going to look back at this season fondly because you saw the grit of a team when things didn't go right. You saw a team that could have rolled over and died the way you saw, frankly, some other teams nationally that didn't have a good year. A team like Michigan, for
Right.
example. And
Yeah.
this is a team that, yes, the first month of the season was not what anybody would have wanted as a Penn State fan. It's not what James Franklin wanted. It's not what these players wanted. But in some ways, that's life at times. And I don't know if you could have replicated the circumstances that led to getting to that point. A botched call in the first game of the season, a game that wasn't as close as it may have appeared to be in the Ohio State game. So you're decimated. You do kind of give up against a very underwhelming Maryland team, Nebraska team. You lose to a pretty good Iowa team, but you get blown off the doors off in the second half. And then all of a sudden the switch clicks and these guys hang in there just long enough to not, yes, these teams weren't necessarily the greatest teams that they played, but those results could have been a lot different. And I think you'll look back on this class and this season in particular, not as necessarily the 4-5 team that it is, but hopefully the bit of sweat equity and maybe rowing the boat, not to go PJ Flack, but kind of manually oaring and rowing your way back to the shore after the engine went out, after you left the dock. That's kind of how I look at this. Is they've done enough, I think, to maintain some of the status quo in recruiting, to maintain the interest in the program amongst the Penn State faithful, and to maintain a little bit of momentum to say, you know what, September 2021, yeah, this is a team that should be ranked in the top 25 and is a team that could easily be the second best team in the Big Ten East. And in mid-October, I don't think we would have been there.
Yeah, and that's kind of, exactly what you said is kind of what I was referring to at the beginning of the show, is that, kudos to them. They never gave up. They could have easily, after that 0-5 start, had an increase in cases, COVID cases, not being responsible, going out, having fun, interacting with the students, and they stayed grounded. And to me, that showed a lot that they continued to fight, because out of all the years, this was the easiest year to give up, and they didn't. And that's credit to the Franklin, the staff, seniors, captains, really everybody. I mean, like you said, 4-5, it's not what you wanted, but I think there's going to be a lot of momentum to build off of for that 4-game win streak going into the next year.
A little bit about us as well as we come to a close here this year. Tyler, I mean, we certainly, I think, did a great job this year, picking up from where we left off, obviously changing our mode of getting to people. And many thanks to Bruce Badgley and the folks at the Small Player Big Play app for hosting us. It was a really fun year. We'll, of course, do it again next year. And more congratulations are in order, not for you and me, because we stink at picking games, but for Brian Mcsorley, former Nittany Lions Sports Report host, who went a perfect 6-0 last week and snatched it from a bunch of 5-1 guest pickers this year. So how about that? I partially blame you because you didn't pick Oregon USC, which was ripe for the upset. So we didn't have to pick that game.
Yeah, I thought that these games were super easy this week. And one of the tougher games, the Lafayette, Louisiana,
Yeah.
Lafayette versus Coastal Carolina, got canceled. So I think that was going to be a tough game. But yeah, they were good picks. They were good picks by Brian, obviously undefeated, first one in 9 weeks to do it. So congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations to him. And the other thing I want to talk about as well is the college football playoff. So the college football playoff has now been decided. Alabama against Notre Dame, 1-4. Clemson, Ohio State, 2-3. Your gut reaction on that?
My gut reaction is I'm really not surprised in the sense that I thought all along that if Clemson beat Notre Dame was still going to get in. Even though they destroyed them like they did, they still got in. And I kind of figured they would slide down to that 4 spot to prevent another Notre Dame-Clemson game. And also because you can't look that bad and hold your spot at 3, or they were 2 at that time. But I don't really have I thought A&M they're in that kind of tough spot. I mean, yeah, they lost to Alabama earlier in the year.
Almost lost to Vandy.
Yeah, but I still think that, I don't know, and we'll never. And I think Ohio State is a better team than A&M, but it's just, to me.
So it's an Ohio State A&M thing, not a Notre Dame.
No. I think Notre Dame and A&M are more equal. A&M and Notre Dame are more equal. I think Ohio State is better than both. But the problem I have with Ohio State is, and it's not their fault, but that they played 6 games. They did win the Big Ten. But you have they're going up against other teams that have played 9 or 10 games, and obviously there's more of a chance of a loss when you're playing more games. So I don't think I think the committee, what they did was fine, but it's just such a bizarre year. And I think we're looking at another Alabama-Clemson title game.
Possibly, probably, I guess.
Like
I still have to think hard
State,
about
yeah.
Ohio State Clemson.
Well, and I know that Ohio State was shorthanded a lot of guys, but man, Northwestern went punch for punch with them. It was a very entertaining game, as sloppy as it was with, missed field goals, turnovers, low scoring. It was very entertaining, and Northwestern, they had Ohio State shaking in their boots a little bit there.
How about that interception at the end of the first half?
Oh my God! Hey, that kid got Big Ten Freshman of the Year.
Yeah,
he got it. He got it over Parker Washington, which after seeing that play, I have no problem with that. Exactly. That was unbelievable.
So I thought you were going to come a little harder on the A&M versus Notre Dame thing.
Well, here's the thing with Notre Dame though. They already beat a playoff team in Clemson.
That's right. That's the difference.
It's not really that I think that the 6 games compared to the 9 or 10, I still think, and it comes down to, I still think Ohio State's better than both of those teams, but it's just under the circumstances, I can live with it. Obviously, it's not normal circumstances, thank God, but like A&M definitely feels like they should have been in it. Notre Dame, I wonder how close they were to playing themselves out of it.
Couldn't have been that far away.
24-point loss. I mean, they got manhandled, and
it felt worse than that. It felt worse than a 24-point loss.
And I think it's going to be just as bad against Alabama.
So let's talk about that just for a second, because I'm sorry, did somebody see an Alabama team that I didn't this past weekend? A team that struggled with Florida?
I mean, they put up 40-some points.
50. 52.
There you go. 50 burger. I think you saw them kind of get comfortable at the end, which isn't really like a Nick Saban team at all. They were in, win or lose. Nothing mattered to them other than the seeding, and they still could have been the first for all we know.
I don't want to take the credit away at all from Florida, though. And I know that the very last, say, 3 minutes, Florida scored, got a stop, and then got the ball. But that game was competitive throughout. Absolutely competitive throughout.
Florida has a lot of playmakers too. I mean, their quarterback's unbelievable. They have Kyle Pitts at tight end. They have tons of good receivers. I think Alabama is. I think the line is like 18.5, 19.5 right now. Alabama favored, which is huge. I think they win about around that 17 to 20 points. I don't think it's really that close to the game. I'm
just saying, this is not a world-beating Florida team, and they took them to the very brink.
I get it. You live, you're married to, a Notre Dame grad. You have to say all the right things.
Has nothing to do with it.
I totally get it.
Everybody's given Alabama absolution for not playing well this weekend.
I just
defensively.
I think that, I mean, I see that part of it for sure. I think Alabama is going to win by 2 to 3 possessions. The second game, I think, is going to be pretty close between Ohio State and Clemson. I'm smiling because for 2 reasons. One, I go back to the game last year, which was an incredible game that Clemson won that semifinal. But also, did you see that Dabo Swinney ranked Ohio State 11th?
Yep.
So that's definitely going to be bulletin board material for the Buckeyes. I don't know why he would do that to fire up the other team unless there's some reverse psychology there. I don't know, but I think that game's going to be a little bit closer than people think, especially if they get some of these guys back.
Agreed. I am holding out to see what their roster looks like. However, at the beginning of the year,
21 days.
Well, but at the beginning of the year,
you did say, yeah,
Ohio State. I thought they were the best team in the country. Obviously, reserve judgment there based upon what type of roster they put on the field, but I think they absolutely could still win the national championship, and it would fire up so many people.
8-0. Well, here's the thing too. Before the season, you're going to pick your national champion. You have a 33% chance to get right. Alabama, Clemson, or Ohio State.
There you go.
All jokes aside, though, I mean, Notre Dame, we always talk about that fourth program that, is consistently, it's usually like Oklahoma, Georgia, LSU obviously was that fourth program last year, even though they were the 1 seed. But Notre Dame's, this is like their second or third playoff appearance. So they're right almost up in that. They're definitely in that. I put Ohio State, Clemson, and Alabama all in tier 1 because they're pretty much in the playoff every year. And then that tier 2, man, Notre Dame's close to getting to that tier. Georgia, Oklahoma,
LSU.
LSU, Notre Dame. I guess you could even. I guess that's probably it. And then you get down, and you get
it's
Florida,
Florida,
Penn State,
Texas A&M.
Yep. Maybe USC, maybe I guess Oregon.
So speaking of which, I stumbled across a very, I guess, representative tweet of what we're talking about right now. Ari Wasserman, of the top 100 players in the 2021 class, 48 are going to one of 5 schools: Clemson, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, and LSU. And some of those guys, many of the remaining 52 haven't even made a decision yet. Some of them, not many of them, but some of them haven't even made a decision. So that number could climb above the 50% mark. 5 programs. And, it's a simple sports economics lesson, right? You could say they're paying players, and there could be some truth to that. But in reality, what it is the opportunity cost to sign your first 5-star player, blue chip prospect, is the exact same as signing your 10th or 15th blue chip prospect. And the reason that's unlike any other sport is if you take the same equation, okay, what is opportunity cost in the NFL? It's draft picks or it's salary cap. And so in the draft pick side, you take the top player, you don't get another choice until 30 picks later. It's not the case in college football. Alabama could get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. in a given class. And then on the salary cap side in the NFL, you pay somebody a big contract. Basically, you pay them what they're worth and their value of production / wins. That's going to hurt how much you can pay the other guys. Well, in college football, taking the pay for play out of it, is simply scholarship, cost of living, stipend. That's it. It's the same for a 5-star going to Alabama as a 2-star, the last scholarship player on Rutgers. It's the exact same. And so a quick sports economics lesson tells you that the rich do get richer. The opportunity cost is exactly the same to sign 1 5-star as 5 5-stars. And so that's why you see a statistic like that.
Yeah. And hopefully the gap, shrinks a little bit, because it would be nice to see some new teams, other than one new team every couple of years get in there. But right now, nothing's really slowing Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson down. Recruiting, momentum, all that, NFL production, it's all real good. But college football does go through cycles as well.
It does. And in these cycles, there's a lot of these programs that are really good for a long time. So I hear people talking about, well, the playoff is to blame for this because it's playoff or bust and the other bowls don't matter as much. Let's not forget that Barry Switzer had a long run of success, that Tom Osborne had a long run of success at Nebraska. And eventually those programs and those dynasties turned over, but they had long runs of success. And right now, Alabama and Clemson are in the midst of those runs of success. Ohio State has kind of been there forever.
Right.
They've been fortunate to hire really tremendous coaes after really tremendous coaches.
And Nick Saban's not going to be at Alabama. I think he's like 70 years old. So, he's getting up there. And then you never know what's going to happen. You just never know. I mean, at any given time, another job could come up. Whether or not these guys have NFL aspirations, I don't think so, at least for Dabo Swinney. He seems like a college guy through and through. But, yeah, I mean, the rich get richer, like you said, and it's tough to break into that top 4. I think Penn State had a very good chance in 2016, obviously, but I thought 2017 was really their shot. I still look back to that loss at Ohio State when they were leading by 18, double digits, multiple times in that game, late in the fourth quarter. and then lost to Michigan State again the week after. But to me, that was their chance to break through. I think under normal circumstances, this season was supposed to be another, breakthrough type that obviously didn't happen. But they're going to have their chances. I don't know if it'll be next year per se, but it goes through cycles, and I think Penn State will get there soon.
This is the Nittany Lions Sports Report. Bob Long, Tyler Gelhaus here. And Tyler, before we bid everybody adieu for the last time this year, you have any big takeaways? Anything you'd like to share? Anything we missed either tonight or in 9 weeks of doing this?
I'm interested really to see what this offseason, these next couple of weeks, there's going to be NFL departures, transfers in, transfers out, medical retirements, maybe even. I'm really interested to see what a full offseason with Kirk Shiraka, Phil Troutline, what the offense, how they can improve this offseason with a full offseason with the new offensive coordinator, Shiraka, going into next year. Because going into next year, man, you're going in with no tune-ups, no cupcakes. You don't have your cupcake game until week 4 against Villanova next year. So you start the year off at Wisconsin. Then you come home to play a pretty good Ball State MAC team. And then you have Auburn coming into Happy Valley. So right off the bat, you have, 2 really tough games. I think that the games at Wisconsin home against Auburn were a little bit more challenging before I saw Wisconsin play more this year. And Auburn's going through a coaching change, and they can't hire somebody. They've really struggled to hire a new coach. So at least Penn State has that to their advantage. But Penn State obviously has to get a lot better, too, to win those games as well.
No doubt about it. Should be fun. Interesting to see what happens with the Virginia Tech slot in the future here as well. Did you see that?
Yeah, that kind of stinks. I'm not like I didn't understand. They said their AD was like, well, Penn State didn't come here this year, so we're not going to go there. Well, it wasn't Penn State's decision not to go there.
No, but I think what it comes down to is they need a home game. They needed a home game one of these 2 years from a revenue
maybe.
perspective.
I'm still waiting for UVA to come up to Penn State. They never returned the favor after the Ficken game back in 2013, I guess. Maybe
Pitt,
it was 2012. Maybe. I mean, I'd be okay with – I know West Virginia's coming up on the schedule here in the next couple of years. Auburn, home and home there. I'm sure Penn State will find a pretty good, appealing opponent, and I think that's good because the out-of-conference games, when you have a bigger opponent, are always fun in the beginning of the season.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Anything else?
I think that's it for me. Obviously, the most unprecedented year, really, hopefully ever. Hopefully next year we're covering the team, and maybe we're able to go to games and there's 107,000 people in there. Fingers crossed on that. It was just totally bizarre year, but at the end of the day, at least we had, a season to cover. So it was unlike any other, but we made it. So
we made it. Penn State football made every game, played in every single game this year. Nittany Lions Sports Report on the air every week of this Penn State football season. COVID couldn't stop us. We appreciate the viewers, new, alongside some of those folks that joined us from the great app there, the Small Player Big Play app, as well as old folks that have been following us for years. We have great viewers, great followers, great opportunity to get on the air and talk to you about Penn State football. We're going to keep it going with some of the interviews that we're going to be doing over the next couple months. Check them out. We started with Winston Eubanks. We're going to be talking to prospects before they commit on campus, before they matriculate to Happy Valley, talk about their journey to get there, hoping to get Nate Bruce in the near future, working on Lonnie White as well. So very excited for the opportunity to bring more Penn State coverage to you over the offseason and get you through the dreary months of winter, headed towards some hope in spring, whether or not there is a spring practice or not this year, and then into the bevy of entertainment that is fall college football. So before you know it, the calendar will be turning back to August, and we will be full throttle once again here on Penn State football. This is the Nittany Lions Sports Report. He's Tyler Gelhaus. I'm Bob Long, saying so long one last time And stay tuned for all the things we have coming up here this year on Bob Long Sports.